the proof sent to me directly and quickly. We're like, expedite it and so we can get this information out to everybody. I do know that a lot of people do look to the calendars to try to determine to keep up with Sabbath and the alignments of the weeks and the months going into the year. Um, and just so you know, it is mostly impossible to, calculate and determine the Enochian Lunar-Solar Calendar a year in advance just because of the pattern of the synodic month and because it averages 29.541 days, and that little bit of the 0.41 throws it off to where we will have a back-to-back 30-day lunar month. And so when that happens, it will skew it for one day later in the year. Sometimes we make it all the way through without there being any changes or challenges, but most often it will by the end of the year, which is why we try to put out a January through December calendar for the Gregorian, that interpretation, and also then the March through February, because that gives us a chance to fix the calendar and to all that is happening within the skies. But um, I wanted to ask you, Lisa, when you first came to knowledge about the possibilities, the Enochian lunar solar calendar and how the moon was involved in determining Sabbath and the Levitical feast days, how it was for you, and was it a difficult truth to embrace, or was it, mind blowing when you were led to it? How was it for you?
This was back in around 2017. So we've been doing this for a little while, but it's definitely taken some practice because
Mm-hmm.
when we first woke up to this truth and realized all of I mean, we already were aware of the pagan holidays and everything, but just to know the entire calendar has been changed to this Gregorian one that we've been forced to observe, and how the actual calendar, like the lunar solar calendar, the one that you put together, um, the one that Enoch describes as well, it makes so much more sense. And it's made especially for those, I mean, those who have done farming for, generations have
Mm-hmm.
always known about this, right? That's
Right.
like their secret, but they didn't call it that. I mean, the Farmer's Almanac, they just, it makes so much sense when you realize the impact that the luminaries, the time of the month, the time of the year has on growing things. And I immediately, when I found out about it, I immediately went into the Farmer's Almanac online, and that helped to explain a lot. I'm horrible. I'm like a black thumb. I am trying to develop my green thumb skills, but Noble's much better at this than I am. But as far as knowing when to plant things, when to harvest things, that to me, that had the greatest impact, because we were just learning, or I was just learning all of that stuff, and how certain crops are planted better at certain other times of the month. And this is not the Gregorian calendar month. So, like, we do Bible studies at our friend's farm. And so when I presented this information that I'm sure we're going to read some today in the book of First Enoch, the courses of the heavenly luminaries, they said, "Oh, well, that makes total sense." And then they said, "Look at what the first task is that the Most High gave Adam. He gave him the rod of wonder to till the ground, right?" And so
Right.
he set it up. We were made to grow our own food, and we've gotten so far away from that. But also to observe the luminaries. Like, before I realized all of this, I once in a while I'd look, and we spend quite a bit of time outside here. So when we were outside at the beach at night or somewhere out, we can easily see the moon. But I never had kept such close track of all the phases of the moon and how it corresponds with Sabbath. And I really appreciate your work on this, Zen. You are a big part of our journey in fully understanding this whole thing, because there's several different theories, well, not really theories, several different calendars, right? Like that
Right.
we'll look at besides the Gregorian. One of them is based on the sun, I believe. That's part of the Lunisolar? Maybe you could explain that. I'm still a little confused with that.
Yeah, and there is a calendar that's released in the Dead Sea Scrolls, and it's a priestly calendar. It's based on the 300 a 30-day for each month, and then you have the four leadership days, which are the solstices and the equinoxes. So you have a 364 days solar calendar, and this is also based on the description of what Enoch brings forth in the book on the courses of the heavenly luminaries, in the description of the progression and the movement of the great luminary, which is the sun. Enoch describes it as it is seated between the third and the fourth gates of heaven. And I have these illustrations and the drawings and the images in my book, Flat Earth as Key to Decrypt the Book of Enoch. And in it, it shows, how the gates are set up, how they have alignment in between the Tropic of Capricorn through the Tropic of Cancer, that the gates begin, with the southern, what seems to be the southern extreme, but which is really our western extreme. Like if you're looking down at the earth as a pizza pie, the earth is a backdrop for the movements of the luminaries, and the North Pole is at the center. We have the outer edges, or what is the ends of the earth. That's the Antarctic ice wall, as far as we know of. And then I do believe that there is more land and continental masses and out there beyond what the world military is allowing people to know and explore and to um, examine. That we're not allowed to go. And there's the Antarctic Treaty, which keeps explorers out from ever going beyond the ice wall. But um, that is the ends of the earth described in the scriptures. And I believe it is built up as these mountains of ice, because the sun's rays aren't often in that area. And when the sun does move towards the northern pole, um, the because it doesn't get a lot of light out there in the southern latitudes, the Brazil and South Africa and Australia, those, even though it is fall and winter, in the time that it's spring and fall for us, there, it's just the opposite of where we are. Like the northern latitudes, America and Europe and all that, we're actually on the inner part of the circle. Like where you see the equator, we're on the right side of that towards the smaller portion of the pizza pie, and then the outer edges is that's where the Antarctic Circle is, and that's where the outer southern continents, or what we consider to be the southern continents, are all out there as well. And so when you understand the movement that Enoch is describing, he begins with it starting on the vernal equinox in between the third and the fourth gate, which is where it's right above the equator. And then he describes it's moving inward towards the North Pole for 91 days until it reaches the summer solstice on June 21st. and that's the closest towards the northern pole that it will get. And it's also moving a lot slower because the circle it is making is a lot smaller until the midnight sun phenomena actually happens. And that is a time when the sun will remain above the horizon for 72 hours and just circle, and everybody can see it completing this circle, which shows that, it is the sun which is moving in a circle around the North Pole, and the Earth is stationary and fixed and non moving, as it says within the scriptures, and that the Earth is the foundation for what are the luminaries that move in circle above it. And so then Enoch describes once it reaches the sixth gate, which is where the Tropic of Cancer is located. Then once it reaches that gate, it will reverse course and go back down through the fifth and the fourth, then cross the equator, and then move into the third and the second and the first gate, which are over southern latitudes, until it reaches the winter solstice on December 21st, which we just had the winter solstice not long ago. And so now the sun is moving back towards the equator from southern latitudes. And this is the summer for the people that are in Australia and Brazil and South Africa. And this is our winter, because the sun is again out above southern latitudes, and having crossed the equator, it's on the left side of the world, on the bigger part of what is the pizza pie of the earth. But would you care to comment, and then we'll move into a couple other things that I wanted to bring up.
Oh, sure, Zen. It when you're giving that description, I've been blessed because I've seen the sun at night in Fairbanks, Alaska in June back in,
Cool.
yeah, so that was really cool. Just amazing to have daylight all the time. It seemed like during that particular month, I had spent the kids and I spent a couple weeks up there at one of my dad's properties, and it was unreal. Like, his wife had blinders for us to make sure that we would get ample sleep because it's just daylight out, and we were staying in their fifth wheel, and it was amazing to have Isaac skateboarding outside at like 12:30, and there's light out. So that was cool. And then we've also, in 2011, when Noble and I were on our honeymoon, we traveled across the Atlantic Ocean and we went around Cape Horn in the month of December. And so we were able to kind of experience a similar thing. It's not quite the same as Alaska, though. I guess because the sun has such a wider circle, down in that area of the
Right.
world. But this is 2011, before we knew anything about our true cosmology, but we could already see off the balcony of the cruise ship that there's definitely no curvature going on. But
Right.
when we went around Cape Horn, there were several things we noticed. The daylight constant, of course, because this is right around Christmas time, so right after winter solstice. And then to know that it took like 3 days just to get around that cape, and we were pretty near Antarctica at that point there too, so that was interesting. And I thought it was going to be cold, and it really wasn't cold, like just a light jacket, and I was fine. And then the other thing I noticed too is there's a huge amount of traffic, like ship-wise, down there around Cape Horn as well.
Mm-hmm.
So just to hear you give that description. And then, of course, we recently went on our trip that I talk about a bit, just to see what was going on at the international dateline and the gates of the sun that would be most likely occurring right there. Do you agree with that? That the gates that you're talking about that Enoch saw would have been like where the sun sets at the international dateline and then rises again?
Well, yeah, the furthest extreme eastward where the sun enters into our visibility, that is where the gate of the sun arrives for us. And then, Enoch describes how the sun and all the luminaries move from the east to the west and then north and then back to the east, which is a circle. So that eastern gate is where the sun reaches visibility and then begins to bathe our world in daylight, and when the morning sunrise dawn happens wherever you are in the world, that is definitely where, the sun arrives on the eastern gate and then crosses through. But as far as the six gates of heaven, those gates are showing where the sun is located as it moves back and forth between the two expanses, the Tropic of Cancer and the Tropic of Capricorn. Because from the winter solstice, December 21st, that's where it reaches the outer limit. And then that's also where, when you watch the sunset on the horizon, it will be the furthest to the west that it will go. And then it reverses course. And for 3 months, it'll move back towards the east until it reaches um, the the equidistant mean, which is the equator. And then that, again, divides the 12 hours a day to 12 hours a night, equal divisions. And then once it crosses the equator, the sun is moving back towards what are northern latitudes. And so when it crosses the equator, that starts spring for us, but fall for people that live in the southern latitudes.
Right.
And then, yeah, and then so once it crosses the equator, it moves towards the Tropic of Cancer, and then that will be the furthest on the eastern horizon. I mean, on the east that we see the sunset, which is the north, actually. It's just a little confusing because when you look at the horizons, it's the left and the right, which is the south and the north, but it looks like the west and the east. Um, but anyway, so, once I had learned that Enoch was describing the sun moving in this manner, it also helped me to make sense of how it is that the sun moves through the different houses of the zodiac over the course of the year. And the Mazzaroth also uh, occurs and happens because it is the sun that is moving and not the earth. And so when you understand that and you actually apply what Enoch is describing as the motions of the great luminary and the motions of the lesser luminary, which is the moon, you have to put these two calendars together in order to make what is the greater heavenly time work, that the Most High set into place and is based on the two great luminaries, as
Yeah.
it speaks about it in Genesis, and especially in the Aramaic Targum. But comment?
Yes, I'm just looking at, just so people know what we're talking about here. And if you haven't read through the book of First Enoch, we both definitely recommend that you read that, right, Zen? And
Yes, absolutely.
and we're talking about the courses of the heavenly luminaries. This is the 10 chapters, I believe, between First Enoch chapter 72 and 82. But
Yes,
the especially the ones I think that were the courses of the moon is more like chapter 73 and 74 as far
right.
as to determine Shabbat or the Sabbath on a
Yes,
monthly basis. There's the Kodesh, right? Like that you
right,
just, and then that would make the Sabbath every 7 days after the first one after the new moon each month.
right. After the
This
waxing crescent, yeah.
Yes, and so I know it's a little difficult for people who are working, like a 5 day a week job and certain hours to observe the Sabbath on those particular days because it changes, right, throughout the
Right,
year. And so it's a little difficult for those who are tied into a very set work schedule, but I believe the Most High has grace, and it's important for the body to take rest at least one day a week to spend time with Him, just to dedicate to Him. And if it's not possible for you to do that on different days every month, according to our Gregorian calendar, the way everything is set up is totally messed up from how it was supposed to be. So, that's not your fault, and it's not something to feel guilty about. Although, like what we did is just pray that we know that He wants us to celebrate His Sabbaths, and that, as it says in the book of Jubilees, that the Most High is celebrating Sabbath in the same time with the angels on these
Right.
particular days. Yeah. And so, and the feasts as well, they, as above so below, that goes both ways. That's the Most High, and the angels that are like a mirror of what's happening here on earth, or we're a mirror of them, actually, in a way
Right.
there. But I like how Jubilees describes it too. I don't know if you'd want me to read some of this then, or if you want to talk about a few more things before we get into reading.
Yeah,
What did
sure. No, we will go into the reading. Let me just bring up one more thing, and then yeah, I think that would be a good idea for us to do some of the reading with regard to this. But again, explaining the calendar and the differences with the calendar that we have created and released. Um, because again, a lot of people do follow just the calendar that is in the Dead Sea Scroll, which is a solar calendar. And it's based on a 364-day solar year. Also, the 360-day year, which is 30 times 12, and it's the exact amount of time that uh, the sun takes 30 days to go through each of these gates of heaven, as is described in the book of Enoch as well. But anyways, and then you have the two uh, equinoxes and the two solstices to make 364 days. But anyways, the reason I don't only support the Zadok calendar, because the Dead Sea Scroll calendar, is because it only incorporates the movements of the great luminary, and you have to incorporate the lesser luminary as well, the moon, and the 364 day and the 354-day lunar calendar, how those two come together and need to be intercalated every third year or so, according to the metatonic cycle. Um, but Enoch describes this in great detail in both the portions on the great luminary and the lesser luminary. And I explain all of that, all of those 12 chapters that Lisa's talking about in this Flat Earth as Key to Decrypt the Book of Enoch, so that you can understand that it is, as the scriptures say, that the earth and the heavens were created together, and that it was much like, what we understand to be a snow globe or a pot, as it says in Isaiah 40:22 too, that the Most High sits upon the circle of the earth, um, and that the earth is his footstool. And so he, has established the heavenly temple upon what is the firmament or the vaulted dome of the earth, as it says in Amos 9:6 as well. Um, in Psalms 19:1, we see that there again is a description of the firmament and also the sun moving within it, because we see that it was on the fourth day that the luminaries, the sun and the moon and the other stars, the Mazzaroth, that they were put into place and that they move within the enclosure of the firmament and they have their orbits set therein. And it's that motion and that movement that the Most High has established for the sun, going back and forth between the tropics of Capricorn and Cancer. That's what gives us and changes the seasons and changes the extent of night and day every day. And the sun is adjusting its speed and also its revolution every day in order to create what is the the solar year, the 30-day, um, every month going through the gates of heaven. Um, but again, it, when you read in the Targum, especially about the creation of the two lights, it says that it was for signs and for festal times. And the moon is very important in determining, especially what is the Sabbath movement of the, the the 4 working weeks that follow the determination of Rosh Kadesh. And so, in my opinion, Sabbath is not something that happens every 7 days, but it's something that happens according to when the waxing crescent makes appearance, and then you have the phases thereafter align with what are the 4 sabbatical weeks that follow that determination. Um, but yeah, if you would, I'll get you to comment on that. And then when we go into the second hour, we can read some of this and talk about it. And then, but I'm glad that you brought that when you talked about it, because I wanted to, after you comment, I wanted to make mention for those people that are not able to follow this calendar, because it came up in our Patreon group last night. And so I want to comment about that and get you to comment about that as well.
Okay, yeah. It's so interesting how in that book that the key to decrypt the book of Enoch and also the vaulted dome of the earth, you make mention, especially in the second one, that of all of these different gates the sun goes through and how it perfectly aligns with that time of the year. And anybody can do this. Like if
Right,
you can have access to go outside and look at the placement, especially of the moon, the phase of the moon, and the sun's placement will change throughout the year as it's going through all of those gates that you just described. And it's something that anybody on earth, and it's so cool how the Most High just has this perfect design, so everybody on earth can take note of the movement of the luminaries every night, and sometimes during the day you can see the moon,
right.
right? So,
Hmm.
and for full moon right now, we're able to see the moon during the day over here in Hawaii. I'm not sure if you took a look outside today, Zen, but we've had, I think part of the New World Order plan is to make the chemtrail cloud cover so heavy and so thick that we won't be able to see the luminaries to see what's going on up there. What are your thoughts on that? Because that dawned on me when I've been going out recently, and it's really hard to see the moon at certain times when it's real thick and heavy spraying going on up there.
Yeah, and for whatever reason, well, I know it's actually because they use the weather, they use the rain to bring down those chemicals that they're spraying into the skies. And the evaporation, the condensation, and the storm production, and how the rain will carry down these heavy metals, the barium and strontium and all the different things that they're spraying into the skies. It will carry it down to
Yeah,
the earth and get people sick, cause respiratory illnesses, things of that nature. But yeah, I think that there is an agenda to not only change the weather patterns and the way things occur, especially with natural, as far as rainstorms and rain production, that they are altering a lot of that. And they can also create drought by doing these kind of things, or if they wanted to, they could create further, more rain production. I mean, it,
yeah,
it, it all depends on the agenda. So if they wanted to do good, they could, but
yeah, they really
that's
could.
never the
And
case. Right.
yeah, exactly. Exactly. That dawned on me the other day when I was looking up, and also too that they read prophecy probably more than most
Right.
people in the churches nowadays. And so they know
Right.
that in the end times the order of these things are going to be what Enoch calls transgressed, which is
Right.
why makes so much of a point to everybody observe what things are like while things are still normal or semi-normal, so that you know when things are off. Because so many people that they don't look up, they're all looking at their phones, they're looking at other things, looking down. But if you just look up into the sky, then that's one way that you can observe for yourself and tell when something is off. That's what I'm counting on, because all of this practice and being able to know when the new moon is, know when the Sabbaths are being celebrated, know when the feasts are, according to what's going on in the sky, will really give us kind of an edge over those who have not studied or not practiced, because it does take a lot of practice to me. What are your thoughts on that, Zen?
Yeah, I do agree. And I think it's very cool to come to understand how the heavens work. And also,
Yeah.
um, you know, because now I also know always which way north is, and that the Most High is seated there and watching over our world from that vantage point. And, what better strategic placement than to establish your throne in the center where you can look down upon and watch everything. Um, and so, yeah, I think it's very cool to come to understand and to come to knowledge on all the things that are going on
Oh,
in
yes.
the heavens and how they determine other things. Go ahead.
Yeah, and to be able to share with other people, that's been such an amazing way. You know how, as a former teacher, I know that the best way to learn the subject material is by teaching other people, right? And so
Right.
that's what you've been doing, Zen, and all your shows on this, and through all of the hard work and many, many hours that you put into putting these calendars together. And it's just so appreciated, all that time that you spent, and it makes it much easier for all the rest of us to just, instead of, and it's still important to go out and observe for yourself, but to just be able to
Yeah.
have something to compare what we're seeing to what you have in the calendar is so valuable.
Yeah, and then that way people can, practice and have an idea as to when they should go out. Even though, again, I said it's not going to be 100% accurate, especially towards the latter part of the year, but at least it gives you an idea as to how the heavens are interacting with us and how we should, watch for the determination of Rosh Kadesh, and then that will set, the then 4 sabbatical weeks, and the alignment with Sabbath, because that's always aligned with the first quarter, the full moon, the third quarter, and the lunar conjunctive moon. But before we get to break, I wanted to answer the question that always comes up, and that's how, for people that follow this calendar and that also believe that the moon is important in excuse me, determining when Sabbath occurs, which, again, I do believe that we are shown in Jasher chapter 88 that even the 7-day march on Jericho, that this began on the Rosh Kadesh, the beginning of the second month. And it's only because you include um, or you discount what is the appearance of the waxing crescent in Rosh Kadesh from the normal 7-day count of the week leading up to Sabbath, that we are able to have, that 7-day march on Jericho and it not fall on the Sabbath or break the Sabbath. And so that, in my opinion, is without a doubt confirmation as to the validity of this calendar system and how it could only be with this calendar system in place that that could have happened. And with every other calendar, if you have a 7-day perpetual Sabbath, then that doesn't work with the way that God has established the calendar and the unfolding of even the direction to take over Jericho, that to march for 7 days, you can't do that on a calendar that is Gregorian or the ones that most people follow. Um, we have to learn about this other system in order to make sense of how, in truth, the calendar system is working and determining the Sabbaths and also the the true Levitical feast days. Uh, but when we get back from break, because we're only 3 minutes out, I wanted to answer to the person that asked us yesterday, well, how do you incorporate the celebration of Sabbath and what does that actually mean for, people and if and how to try to honor it, Sabbath and relationship with the Most High. And so when we come back from break, we'll go into that and cover that question with more thoroughness because that is a really good question. And, a lot of people try to keep the 7 day perpetual Sabbath unfolding on either Saturday or Sunday, depending on if they're, LDS or whatever. But, again, in my opinion, the Sabbath is determined by the phases of the moon. So we'll get into that more. But um, let me give you a chance for 2 minutes. We have before the break. Anything that you'd like to comment on or speak
Okay.
about?
Yeah, I was just thinking of how even the so-called nation of Israel in the Middle East right now does not observe Shabbat or Sabbath according to the moon cycle or the
Right.
luminary cycle. It's always on a Saturday, and they make a huge deal of it. I'm not sure if Justin and Joy told her, if like what a gigantic deal. Everything is closed on Saturday. They're very, I
Right.
guess you could say, like pharisaical about it because
Mm-hmm.
even in the hotels, like we stayed in some hotels there, and on the Sabbath, you cannot press elevator buttons. They consider that work. So
Really?
every single floor is pressed when you go up to your hotel room. So you have to wait and you stop at every floor so that you don't do, because they consider it, oh, that's part of electronics. Electronics is energy. That's considered work. That's their thinking. But
Mm-hmm.
it was gets a little bit irritating because they are super like extremely strict and extreme. And then to know that they're not really even observing it according to their own calendar, it just
Mm-hmm.
it kind of is mind blowing, but that was kind of confusing when we were there as well. But I mean, the majority of the world, they really, the prophecy is so true that Enoch talks about, that everyone's going to forget, and that's why even in
Right.
as the only commandment that says remember the Sabbath day, there's a
Right.
reason for that, right? In when Moses got the commandments and from the Most High, and that was the one that he knew, because he knew. I mean, of course, the Most High knows everything, but he knew that in the later generations that we would forget, and that's exactly what happened.
Yep. We'll be right back, everyone.
Shalom.
As a bookstore for truth seekers, it's our goal to make ancient manuscripts which were once held captive by secretive institutions available for public consideration. In our generation, where wisdom has increased, as Daniel the prophet foretold, we have access to many of the testimonies our early church brethren were persecuted for preserving. After being hidden for centuries, these manuscripts have been leaked from various sources throughout the earth, and it's our goal to gather these sources into printable form to make available for all who seek the ancient way. If you're looking to deepen your studies of the biblical narrative, find these ancient manuscripts and more at sacredwordpublishing.com.
I love motherhood more than I could have ever imagined. One of the most important things to me is nurturing a strong foundation in Yahusha's character in our children. That said, I made sheets that went over the fruits of the Spirit, the armor of God, the 10 Commandments, and creation days. Each day at breakfast, we would go over these and then read books like Cat in the Hat that just felt so void in meaning, but they loved the rhymes. I looked everywhere for rhyming biblical principles and couldn't find any. That's when I decided I would make them myself. Praise God, we now have our first book, Eliana and Ezra's Journey Through the Fruits of the Spirit, a first in a series. Every morning we now can continue to build strong principles even through rhymes, and I wanted to offer it to the babies in your life too. Please go to Sacred Word Publishing and search Fruits of the Spirit to get your copy, or you can go to prophecyforchildren.com. Thank you so much.
Your partnership with Sacred Word Publishing goes further than the publishing of ancient manuscripts and weekly video content.
You also make a huge impact across the earth in orphanages in Myanmar, India, Uganda, and Kenya.
Your support is crucial for the development of the ecclesia of real truth seekers.
We thank you for joining us in hosting Secrets Revealed, Momentary Zen, the Digital Readers Club, Ask Me Anything series, and other shows that have helped lead so many to the truth of salvation.
To become even more involved, please visit patreon.com/sacredwordpublishing, where you can partake in exclusive, interactive, patron-only content and help us continue shining the light of love in this darkened world.
All right. Thanks for listening while we take that short break here at Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. And now we're going to get back to your host.
All right. Welcome back, everybody, for a second hour. Let me change one thing here really quickly, and then we will answer that question that I wanted to.
Yeah, I think that's
Yeah,
a really important one to answer too, Zen. That's something that when we teach other people about this for the first time, that's one of their first questions.
right. Yeah, I agree. And so, because I'm long-winded, I'm going to get you to answer first, and then I'll go into it.
Okay, so what we usually tell people when we're introducing the lunar solar calendar, according to the book of Enoch, and also in Leviticus and a bunch of other texts, the book of Jubilees, kind of show them all this information first. And um, I mean, everything is totally biblical. The thing is, it's sad because in churchianity, in the mainstream churches in the USA anyway, the majority of them do not follow this. They do not teach this whatsoever. They read it over, and the majority of the pastors that I've encountered anyway, they usually just say, "Oh, well, that's Old Testament. You know, we don't do that." But the thing is, it's like there's so much evidence that this is like going to be for your generations forever. Like that, there in the readings that we're going to be doing, you'll see what I mean. That it's not something that stopped just because the Messiah came or something. This is like these are feasts ordained for the people of Yah, or the people of the Most High, and they should be an ordinance for your generations forever. So, but he knew, well, of course, like what we were saying before break, that all of this was going to be lost. There was going to be such a huge shift in the calendars, and such a deception to celebrate the pagan feasts instead of the feasts described in the Bible, that he knew that we were going to have issues, and he knew that there was going to be a huge overpowerment of government that would force people to work certain schedules instead of, you know, what the farming schedule would be like, which is not according to the Gregorian calendar for the most part at all. And he
Right.
knew we were going to forget. And so, of course, there's going to be things that are in place in our society that would make it impossible, or very close to not possible, to support your family, to work the job that you've been at, and that with taking different days off depending on what month it is. Zen, you there?
Right.
I just want to make sure.
Yes.
Okay, good. Yeah, so
Yeah.
your thoughts on that, Zen? I'd like to hear your explanation.
Yeah. Well, first, I think that when you're trying to honor the true Sabbath and you are examining, looking at some of these um, different calendars and how they were utilized, recognized, and honored in ancient times, that again, looking at the story of Exodus um, and how it was that they had the 6 days for the manna, and then even on the sixth day you had a double portion. There was no manna that came down on, as far as when the timing for the full moon, how that linked with uh the Levitical, the unleavened bread, and the Feast of Tabernacles. Those were important, and I'll go into some of the things here that confirm, even like with the story of Jasher, and how it was that you could only have a 7-day march when you include the beginning of the month, which is the waxing crescent, in that determination. Otherwise, you would have the Most High breaking his own Sabbath. And so I'll start with that. I'll share that first from the book of Jasher, and then I'll answer this question because it's so important. But here in chapter 88, verses 14 through 17, it says, "And it was in the second month, on the first day of the month, which is Rosh Chodesh, that Yahuwah said to Joshua, 'Rise up, behold, I have given Jericho into thy hand with all the people thereof, and all your fighting men shall go round the city once each day. Thus shall ye do for 6 days. And on the seventh day they went round the city 7 times, and the priests blew upon the trumpets.'" And for those that know the story, the walls uh, came tumbling down, and the city was exposed and they were routed by the Israelites. That in the same way that Jerusalem, was allowed to be invaded um, when Nebuchadnezzar came in. In that same way, the walls were brought down for the Israelites to enter into Jericho. But anyways, it tells us that it was the first day of the second month, or what is Rosh Chodesh. And when you have Rosh Chodesh beginning the month and also beginning the what is the 7-day march, it makes sense because it would have been on the eighth day that they would have celebrated the first Shabbat. And so that was a day of rest and celebration for them. Um, and so, again, this is the story that confirms that the Israelites had in place during the Exodus this particular calendar. And I want to read one other thing, and this is from the Perk de Rabbi Eleazar, and it tells us also that the Most High had given this calendar to Adam, and that it was passed down through the generations and the children of Adam, all the way up until the time of Joseph, which is when the the Israelites eh, embraced the pagan ways of Egypt. They were worshiping the golden calf and that kind of thing. Um, and that before then, this calendar was in place, and it was reestablished with Moshe and Aaron, which I think, this is a very important part of the puzzle that most people, don't understand. But again, it shows you that this calendar has been utilized and was put into place going back to the beginning. So I'll read this really quickly. It says, on the 28th of Elul, the sun and the moon were created. The number of years, months, days, nights, terms, seasons, cycles, and the intercalation were before the Holy One, blessed be He. And He intercalated the years, and afterward He delivered the calculations to the first man in the Garden of Eden. As it is said, this is the calculation for the generations of Adam. The calculation of the world is therein for the generations of the children of Adam. Adam handed on the tradition to Enoch, who was initiated in the principle of intercalation. And they intercalated the year, as it is said, and Enoch walked with God. Enoch walked in the ways of the calculation concerning the world which God had delivered to Adam. And Enoch delivered the principle of intercalation to Noah, and he was initiated in the principle of intercalation, and he intercalated the year. Noah handed on the tradition to Shem, and he was initiated in the principle of intercalation. He intercalated the years, and he was called a priest, as it is said, and Melchizedek, the king of Salem, a priest of God Most High. Yes, Shem is Melchizedek. Shem delivered the tradition to Abraham. He was initiated in the principle of intercalation, and he intercalated the year. Abraham delivered the tradition to Isaac, and he was initiated in the principle of intercalation. And he intercalated the year after the death of our father Abraham. Isaac gave to Jacob all the blessings and delivered to him the principle of intercalation. Jacob delivered to Joseph and his brethren the principle of intercalation, and they intercalated the year in the land of Egypt. When Joseph and his brethren died, the intercalation ceased from Israel in Egypt. Just as the intercalations were diminished from the Israelites in the land of Egypt, likewise the future will the intercalations be diminished at the end of the fourth kingdom, until Elijah, be he remembered for good, shall come. And so we know Enoch and Elijah are the two witnesses of Revelation 11. And
Yeah.
so, as you said, Lisa, this same thing would happen at the end of days for the fig tree generation, which that's where we are, and that's what we are seeing, is that people have lost how to determine and follow the real calendar for the determination of the Sabbath and the Levitical feast days. Just a little bit more continuing. So, just as the Holy One, blessed be He, was revealed to Moshe and Aaron in Egypt, likewise in the future will He be revealed to them at the end of the fourth kingdom, as it is said. And the Lord spake unto Moshe and Aaron in the land of Egypt, saying, This month shall be unto you the beginning of months. Till now the principle of intercalation was with me. Henceforth it is your right to intercalate, thereby the year. Thus were the Israelites wont to intercalate the year in the Holy Land. And so that's how the calendar was reestablished with Moshe and Aaron after Joseph and his children passed on and knowledge of this was lost. So let me get you to comment and then I'll answer that question with that girl.
Okay. Yeah, I love how that particular text, the Perkta Rabbi Eliezer, mentions intercalated so many times. And before you
Right.
just read this, I didn't realize that. And we were teaching, when we were teaching, we've taught the Book of Enoch several times in our in-person studies here. And the latest time when we went through, that word was very much focused on by everyone who was attending. And they're saying, what is that? What is intercalary? What are those intercalary days? And so we were happy to explain that, that has to do with what you talked about earlier with the
Right.
The equinox, the solstice is basically the 21st of December, of March, June, and September, right? I believe that that's what Enoch is describing as well in his Courses of the Luminary books. And I have my place set here several times. In fact, there's even a section that is titled in the R.H. Charles translation, the charge given to Enoch, the 4 intercalary days, the stars which lead the seasons and the months. And that is First Enoch in chapter 82. And a little bit later, after you answer this question, I'm more than happy to read that, because that really explains.
Yeah, sure, that'd be great.
Yeah. And so that's, I just think it's extremely important to know this information. And it took us a while. Back in 2017, when we were first presented with all this information through you and Rob and through other people such as like the God Culture, Tim and Anna Schwab, we happened to be in the Philippines when we were just having this revelation, and we were talking on the phone with Tim, and Tim was like, just read Jubilees, just read Jubilees 6, you'll get it. Don't worry, you guys got this. It's kind of stressful at first. I mean, it was for me anyway.
Well, it's a lot of information to take in, and because we've not been taught this information, most people have no idea as to what it's about and what it's connected to. But again, in the Book of Enoch, he tells us about the 2 calendars. One's 364-day solar calendar, and then the 354-day lunar calendar. And the intercalation is that about every 3 years, because the 354-day lunar calendar has 10 days. It's 10 days short of the 364-day solar year. And so because the lunar calendar is 10 days short, about every 3rd year, you have to add the 13th month, which is Adar 2. So you add that 13th month, and that intercalates the lunar year with the solar year, so that both of those calendars are back in sync. And that's also why the Israelites watched the barley, because as long as, the Passover, the Feast of Passover, um, and the barley crop were in play, together, then you could start and have the celebration of Passover, and also the waving of the Omer for the first fruits. because if the barley crop is not in place, then you have to add that 30-day, that additional second month of Adar in order to sync the two calendars together. And that's the important part of that. But it's really, it's simple. It's easy. All you do is, add a month every third year or so, and that brings the calendars back in sync. Um, but anyway, so the lady that had asked us about how to celebrate and to honor Shabbat according to this calendar. First, the question of how to honor and why one should honor Shabbat is, I believe, because the Most High wants us to have relationship with Him. That the Godhead, the Holy Trinity, they want us to be in intimate relationship with them, and that this relationship is real and it's important, and that we have at least one day um, a week according to the work weeks um, to have this time off to be with the Most High. And I believe to study His scriptures, because it's in reading and studying the Word that we get to really know who our Creator was, and how everything was made for us, and especially made, and that our race, modern humanity, was made in the image of the heavenly family, and that we represent that here on the earth, and that male and female coming together is as one flesh, and then having children in the image of the parents is in the same thing. Christ is the only begotten. He is the union of the father and the mother, the holy mother, the holy parents um, in heaven, and so they represent this heavenly family. So, anyways, the whole idea, I believe, of honoring Sabbath and honoring Shabbat is so that we can develop a relationship with the Most High and
Yeah.
come to know Him and His Word on a more intimate basis. And so, what I told that girl was um, Antionetta, which is a beautiful name. I told her to just try to, even if you're working, to keep your heart and your mind on the Most High with whatever, just, gratitude. And I think prayers of gratitude when you eat and drink, anything that you are, taking into your body, that we should give gratitude to the Most High for the blessings and the bounty, and how the Israelites always started the new harvest, first fruits, with the offering and the giving and the gratitude for that bounty, and then they would eat from the fresh crop for the rest of the year. But yeah, so I think just honoring Sabbath in the best way that you can, even if you're working that day, to keep your heart and your mind on the Most High, that's the way to do it, and that we just try to do the best that we can. Lisa.
Yes. Yeah, and there's a question in the chat from Elo Talks. What do you do to honor Shabbat? I can give you some examples of what we do, and then I remember you were
Yeah.
sharing yesterday too, Zen, of what you do. So
Yeah, please.
Today is Shabbat for us. We try to stick as closely as we can to the Luna-Solar Calendar, and we're able to do this since we're not working 9-to-5 jobs. We have other forms of income. But if you're in that situation, then by all means, I think it's wonderful to pray and to spend time with the Most High, and doing just what Zen was saying, to read. I like to choose a particular extra biblical and read through it, and then either call one of my friends and share what I was reading, or my son or my daughter-in-law, and just have a conversation, or just, or Noble and I, we talk quite a bit throughout the day about what we're reading, what we're studying. but especially to connect with the Most High on that day that you have set aside to honor Him. I agree with you, Zen, that I think that's what He looks at the most. The people who have hearts to want to honor one day out of the week for the Most High God. He honors that. I mean, regardless on what day you're able to do that, I just feel as well. It's a good time. What I like to do is I fast, and I'm not doing this in a prideful way, but just to kind of share like what types of things that we do. And I'll fast and just have liquids during the day until sundown, starting from the night before, or fast a particular type of food if we're kind of active, and if I decide I want to go surfing or something during that day, it's not too great of an idea to do that vigorous of an activity if you're not eating. So maybe I'll eat some bananas or just something light throughout the day. And to me, the fast is set aside as well, I think, particularly for Shabbat. According to like Apocalypse of Elijah, there's quite a huge section in the beginning of that book about fasting. And I love to read that section. So if you haven't read that yet, I would definitely recommend reading that Apocalypse, where Elijah describes the fast and what it was created for, and how it produces healing within the body as well.
Yes.
It's so important to do fasting on a regular basis. And also too, another perk about being able to fast, even throughout the week, if you can even narrow down the amount of meals that you're having throughout the day, it's kind of a preparation for the last days, where it says food might not be as readily available as it is right now, and to prepare your body for that. And the body doesn't need huge amounts of food to be able to function. It's and especially if you're fasting as well, to maybe not fast. I mean, I'm sorry, to not eat like the really rich and foods that are just going to make you exhausted and then you can't think. And to me, my prayer life is a lot more meaningful when I'm fasting. What are your thoughts, then?
I think fasting is an amazing tool to bring one in a repentant heart and a humble condition before the Most High. And so, yeah, I think it's also a way for us um, to kind of neglect a little bit in order to appreciate the gratitude, to have appreciation for the abundance that we are given, and that sometimes it's good to hold back from indulging all the time, and even just a meal, because even putting away the time and having a meal, um, sometimes that's just showing to the Most High how much we want to have and seek relating with Him. And fasting, I think, is a way to get in a repentant heart and mind, and to again, to show that gratitude for all the abundance that He does pour out upon us. But yeah, and as you were saying, with regard to honoring Sabbath, I think studying the Word, and whatever, if it's the King James for you, or extra biblical texts, or just because I think a lot of things have been inspired by the Most High, and there's a lot of information out there that could be beneficial for people to read and to study and to know about, that helps us to better make sense of even the canonical materials. And so that's what I like to do. I like to be, as I was describing yesterday, about being outside and in the elements, especially in the spring when everything's blooming and everything's excited to be alive, and all the creatures are, raising their young and preparing for another season of growth. It's a it's a beautiful time, when everything's blooming and it's warm and you can be outside and feel the sun on your face, the wind through your hair, and just being with the creation like that is a beautiful blessing. And so, um, yeah, I think, but just keeping the Most High in your heart and your mind, that's that's what's important with Sabbath, and I think that's what the Most High wants for us to do
Yeah.
that.
Yes, definitely. And a lot of people, they feel like, oh, we want to observe this, the Rosh Chodesh, and we want to have it on the correct day and everything. And sometimes it's just not possible. So that's usually what we tell people too. Like, pray about it. If the Most High wants you to keep Sabbath on these particular days, He'll make a way through your work. But He just appreciates just even the knowledge. There's majority of the world doesn't observe it in any other way, in the way that the Most High has set it up for us to observe it. And so just even putting forth the effort and spending time with Him, He appreciates every minute of that. So that's what we usually tell people as well.
Yes, and again, however people can be with the Holy Trinity, with the Godhead, whether it's in prayer or getting together. You said calling your friends, talking about the Word. All those kind of things are important. Anything that puts your mind and your heart on the Most High, I think that's what He has set apart Sabbath for us, so that we can do exactly that.
Yes, definitely. Would you be okay if I read some of the scriptures I have marked over here for this
Please
year's?
do.
Before I do that, I wanted to comment also, I really love the photography in this calendar that you've put together, Zen. And these are pictures that are taken by Joy's father, right? That are
Yes,
included.
Joy's dad is a photography rock star. So, yes,
Yeah,
his work is amazing, and we've been able to share it and have it out there and celebrate, the working of these calendars and the making of them, and with his work, which we're honored to be able to share his work as well. He does amazing, beautiful images. So
yeah.
yeah, I
Oh,
think that's another thing that people will enjoy.
definitely. It's so beautiful. The first reading I'm going to do is from First Enoch chapter 80. I'm going to read a little bit. This section is titled "The Perversion of Nature and the Heavenly Bodies Owing to the Sin of Men." And then I'm going to go into chapter 82 that talks more about the 4 intercalary days, just so that everyone can get an idea about what Zen was referring to when he was reading earlier from the book of the Perk D. Rabbi Eliezer. And so this is from chapter 80, First Enoch. I'm going to start with verse 2, if you'd like to follow along. And this is the R.H. Charles translation. And the days of the sinners, the years shall be shortened, and their seed shall be tardy on their lands and fields. And all things on the earth shall alter, and shall not appear in their time. And the rain shall be kept back, and the heaven shall withhold it. And in those times the fruits of the earth shall be backward, and shall not grow in their time. And the fruits of the trees shall be withheld in their time. And the moon shall alter her order, and not appear at her time. And in those days the sun shall be seen, and he shall journey in the evening on the extremity of the great chariot in the west, and shall shine more brightly than accords with the order of light. And many chiefs of the stars shall transgress the order prescribed, and these shall alter their orbits and tasks, and not appear at the seasons prescribed to them. And the whole order of the stars shall be concealed from the sinners, and the thoughts of those on the earth shall err concerning them. And they shall be altered from all their ways. Yea, they shall err and take them to be gods. And evil shall be multiplied upon them, and punishment shall come upon them, so as to destroy all. And so this is what I'm going to read from chapter 82 here. The charge given to Enoch, the 4 intercalary days, the stars which lead the seasons and the months. Okay, so I'm going to start over here with verse 7. And the account thereof is accurate, and the recorded reckoning thereof exact. For the luminaries and months and festivals and years and days has Uriel shown and revealed to me, to whom the Lord of the whole creation of the world has subjected the host of heaven. And he has power over night and day in the heaven, to cause the light to give light to men, sun, moon, and stars, and all the powers of the heaven, which revolve in their circular chariots. And these are the orders of the stars, which set in their places, and in their seasons and festivals and months. And these are the names of those who lead them, who watch that they enter at their times, in their orders, in their seasons, in their months, in their periods of dominion, and in their positions. Their 4 leaders who divide the 4 parts of the year enter first, and after them the 12 leaders of the orders who divide the months. And for the 360 days there are heads over thousands who divide the days. And for the 4 intercalary days there are the leaders which sunder the 4 parts of the year. And these heads over thousands are intercalated between leader and leader, each behind a station, but their leaders make the division. And these are the names of the leaders who divide the 4 parts of the year which are ordained: Milkiel, Elimelech, Melechal, and Narel. And the names of those who lead them: Adnarel, and Isujael, and Elomiel. And these 3 follow the leaders of the orders, and there is one that follows the 3 leaders of the orders, which follow those leaders of stations that divide the 4 parts of the year. In the beginning of the year, Melchiel rises first and rules, who is named Tamaini and Sun, and all the days of his dominion while he bears rule are 91 days. And these are the signs of the days which are to be seen on earth in the days of his dominion: sweat and heat and calms, and all the trees bear fruit, and leaves are produced on all the trees, and the harvest of wheat, and the rose flowers, and all the flowers which come forth in the field. But the trees of the winter season become withered. And these are the names of the leaders which are under them: Berkael, Zelazbel, and another who is added ahead of 1,000, called Hiluyasuf. And the days of the dominion of this leader are at an end. The next leader after him is Helimelech, whom one names the shining sun, and all the days of his light are 91 days. And these are signs of his days on the earth: glowing heat and dryness, and the trees ripen their fruits and produce all their fruits ripe and ready, and the sheep pair and become pregnant, and all the fruits of the earth are gathered in, and everything that is in the fields and the winepress, these things take place in the days of his dominion. These are the names and the orders and the leaders of those heads of thousands: Gideal, Keel, and Heel, and the name of the head of 1,000, which is added to them, Asphael, and the days of his dominion are at an end. Right, and so that gives a little bit more explanation about those 4 intercalary days. I noticed that it says 360 days, and that's minus those 4 days that we just talked about. Right, the March 21st, the June 21st, September 21st, and December 21st, according to the Gregorian calendar. But I love it how it gives more description, even all those names. Like, I mean, the Most High is definitely a God of order, because he's got all of these ranks set up. He's got everybody having to answer to someone higher up. You know, I'm sure that the military of the world has patterned their ranking according to how he set it up in the first place, right?
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And we've been reading the Digital Readers Club, the Legends of the Jews, and it shows how the Most High even established council, with the other portions, like for instance, the Torah and Christ and the angels. How when he comes together for a meeting, like the Psalms 81, where it speaks about the council of the mighty. Psalms 82, sorry, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so even the Most High and kings, and having counsel with their attendants and with their counselors, and that was in the fashion of the Most High. And so we see a lot of what is established in the heavens being repeated here. That even Satan establishing the pyramids and the megalithic structures and sites here on the earth when they were banished and cast out, that's a representation of what is in the heavens as well. And I do believe that when New Jerusalem descends out of the skies that we will see that, um, that there will be, these pyramidal complexes, the temples that the Most High has established it in that manner as well. But yeah, reading and studying from, again, the book of Enoch, the first portion tells us about the cycle of the 364 days of the solar calendar, which is, as I said, 30 days each through each of the six gates of heaven, back and forth. That's 6 months, and then six more, that's 12 months. So that's 30 days times, um, the 12 months, which is 360 days. And then, as Lisa said, you have the four intercalary, the equinoxes and the solstices, which divide the seasons. According to Enoch's calendar, there's exactly 91 days between each of the seasons of the year, beginning with the vernal equinox that starts the solar year. Then the summer solstice begins summer, and the autumnal equinox begins fall, and then the winter solstice also um, begins winter. And so that's how it's set up. Then we have, again, the 354-day lunar calendar, which I'm going to share a portion from the book of Enoch, which tells us when the beginning of the month is. And also um, that when the moon begins to renew and repair itself, meaning to become visible again, that is when we have, according to Enoch, what is the beginning of the month. So I'll share that, and then we'll move. There's a more confirming witness about this from Philo and from the book of Ecclesiasticus, or the wisdom of Jesus, son of Sirach. So we'll share a few of these as well. But this is the book of Enoch, chapter 72, verse 5. At that time it appears and becomes to you the beginning of the month. 30 days it is with the sun in the gate from which the sun goes forth. Half of it is in extent 7 portions. One half and the whole of its orb is void of light, except a seventh portion out of the 14 portions of its light. So Enoch's telling us the beginning of the months will be when the moon becomes 1/7 portion visible, which it's in 7 portions that it goes from being completely void of light to being completely full. And then another 7 portions um, for it to become completely void of light again, to become filled with light and then void of light. And we know that's a 29.5 day cycle. And that, according to the book of Enoch, that we have these alternating months of 28 and 29 days, and you add that with the appearance of the waxing crescent, and that gives us a 354-day lunar year. So I'll continue reading this again. And in the day it receives a seventh portion, or half that portion, of its light. Its light is by sevens, by one portion and by half a portion. It sets with the sun. And when the sun rises, the moon rises with it, receiving a half a portion of light. And on that night, when it commences its period, previous to that day of the month, the moon sets with the sun. And on that night, it is dark in its 14th portions, that is in each half. So this is when the moon is in its lunar conjunctive phase, and it's completely dark. And here it says, but it rises on that day with 1/7 portion precisely, and in its progress declines from the rising of the sun. So when the waxing crescent makes appearance, it's actually moving away from the sun so that it becomes visible as that thin layer, that real thin sliver, which, makes it almost like a smiley face, depending on what year it is. And so, Enoch chapter 72, verse 10, during the remainder of its period, its light increases to 14 portions. So it's telling us that, over these 14 days, it's going to become full, from being a waxing crescent to being a full moon, and then it will lose its light in the second half of uh, what is the dark phases of the moon. All right. One thing here from the wisdom of Jesus, son of Sirach. It is the moon that marks the changing seasons, governing the times, their everlasting sign. From the moon comes the sign for the festal days, a light that wanes when it completes its course. The new moon, as its name suggests, renews itself. How marvelous it is in this change, a beacon to the hosts on high, shining in the vault of heavens. Really quickly, one last thing here. Uh, Even the word for Kadesh, which means the new moon, by implication a month, it comes from the verb kadash, which means, it's a primitive root word, to be new, causatively, to rebuild, to renew, or to repair. I'll share one last thing and then I'll get you to comment here, Lisa.
Sure.
And this has to do with the very first Passover. Because we're told again that this was restored to Moshe and Aaron. And we find this in the legends of the Jews about how this calendar, because we see in the Pirkei Rabbi Eleazar that this knowledge was lost with Joseph after him and his sons, or the elders of the 12 tribes, after they passed, this knowledge was lost. And then it is restored to Moshe and Abraham. And that's what it's saying here. So, when the time approached in which, according to the promise made to Abraham, his children would be redeemed, it was seen that they had no pious deeds to their credit, for the sake of which they deserve release from bondage. God therefore gave them two commandments, one bidding them to sacrifice the paschal lamb, and one to circumcise their sons. Along with the first, they received the calendar in use among the Jews for the Passover feast is to be celebrated on the 15th day of the month of Nisan, which is a full moon. And with this month, the year is to begin. But the computations for the calendar are so involved that Moshe could not understand them until God showed him the movements of the moon plainly. There were three other things equally difficult which Moshe could not comprehend. Only after God made him to see them plainly. They were the compounding of the holy anointing oil, the construction of the candlestick and the tabernacle, and the animals, the flesh of which is permitted or prohibited. Also, the determination of the new moon was the subject of special divine teaching. So, this tells us again that it was Moshe and Aaron that it was restored through, and that it is with the waxing crescent that we have the beginning of the lunar months. But let me get you to comment. The show's already almost done. It's crazy. Lisa?
I know. That went really fast, didn't it?
It really did. My goodness.
Yeah, and another, your reading reminded me of another question, because you said how Moshe restored it. People had stopped doing it since the days of Joseph. And another question that we get when we're studying this particular concept about the Rosh Chodesh and about the things that, there's quite a few notable things in the Bible and in extra biblicals that happen during the certain Rosh Chodeshes or certain new moons. And so another question, the question that we get quite a bit is, well, who would have taught it to Joseph, in the first place? Because most of people think that everything happened, starting with Moses. So what did they do before then? But I wanted to read, if that's okay, a few from the book of Jubilees that tell how all of this started way back with Adam. Like, this was some of the things that were taught to Adam by the Most High. And so this has been going on since the beginning of the world, like what you were talking about, we were reading in the Legends of the Jews, and how even like the whole creation process was set up, right? Because he rested on the seventh day. That's the first Shabbat.
Exactly.
Right?
Yes. Exactly.
Yeah, I'm going to read from the book of Jubilees, and I'm going to read a couple different parts here. I'm going to start with chapter 3, verse 26, and this is just kind of leading up to show how Adam was the first one to make sacrifice and to observe this all according to Rosh Chodesh, or new moon. So this, I'm going to start with verse 26, just to give a little context here. And he made for them coats of skin and clothed them and sent them forth from the Garden of Eden. And on that day on which Adam went forth from the garden, he offered as a sweet savor and offering frankincense, galbanum, and stocte, and spices in the morning with the rising of the sun from the day when he covered his shame. And this is that same day. It goes on to talk about how the mouths of all the beasts, all that was closed. And then I'm going to go to verse 31. On this account, it is prescribed on the heavenly tables as touching all those who know the judgment of the law, that they should cover their shame and should not uncover themselves as the Gentiles uncover themselves. And on the new moon of the 4th month, there it is again, the Rosh Chodesh, Adam and his wife went forth from the Garden of Eden, and they dwelt in the land of Eldah, in the land of their creation. Okay, so that was the first mention of anything happening. So that was on that same day that he left, he did sacrifice, and that was like it doesn't say exactly what the sacrifice was for, but they just had the garden incident. So I mean, it would be a good chance for Adam to show repentance, I believe.
Right. I think it was Passover, actually.
Oh, it was a Passover. Oh,
Yeah.
that would make more sense. Wow.
Right.
Okay. I'm gonna make a note of that. Thank you, Zen. The next one in the book of Jubilees that I've found in here is in chapter 5, and this is concerning Noah, the days of Noah. So, like you talked a bit earlier about when you did the book of Joshua reading, or Yasher reading, of how these new moons, these started like way back, and the Melchizedek order was part of their role, was to make sure that these ordinance, these feasts, these events that were all done around the luminaries, that they would be done according to what God had taught in the first place to Adam. And so this is verse 21. He commanded Noah to make him an ark, that he might save himself from the waters of the flood. And Noah made the ark in all respects, and the 27th Jubilee of years. And so then it talks more about how all of this happened over the flood. We get a lot of this in the book of Genesis as well. But then in the next chapter, on Jubilees chapter 6, it starts out, and on the new moon of the 3rd month, he went forth from the ark and built an altar on that mountain. And then it goes on to how he made atonement for the earth. He did a sacrifice. We get this in the book of Genesis as well. And it says, and this should be in verse 12, it says, this testimony is written concerning you, that you should observe it continually, so that you should not eat on any day any blood of beasts or birds or cattle during all the days of the earth. The man who eats the blood of beasts or cattle or birds, he and his seed shall be rooted out of the land. And it goes on to some more of the laws that were given to Noah that we don't get in the book of Genesis. And how it says in verse 17, it says, for this reason it is ordained and written on the heavenly tables, they should celebrate the Feast of Weeks in this month once a year, to renew the covenant every year. And how this whole festival was celebrated in heaven from the day of creation till the days of Noah, 26 Jubilees and 5 weeks of years. And Noah and his sons observed it for 7 Jubilees and 1 week of years, till the day of Noah's death. And from the day of Noah's death did his sons away with it until the days of Abraham. So it sounds like there's been several times where they would forget or they would stop doing the feast of the Most High is given
Right.
to Adam, just like
Yeah.
we saw between the days of Joseph and Moses, right?
Right. Yes. And I think, we have different portions because, like, even Dan, they had set up an alternative place for them to go worship instead of going to Jerusalem, and they were kind of banished out because of that. So we see a lot of those kind of things mentioned. Um, like in Isaiah, it says, "And it shall be from new moon to new moon, or Kadesh to Kadesh, and from Sabbath to Sabbath, Shabbat to Shabbat. All mankind will come to bow down before me." This is talking about during the millennial reign. So even during the millennial reign, we're going to be keeping the same calendar. We'll be honoring the new moons, the Rosh Kadesh, and also the Sabbaths, because Rosh Kadesh again aligns and determines when Sabbath occurs and when it's to be celebrated. And the Most High is telling us, through Isaiah, that even in the millennial age, we'll be honoring this same kind of thing, because the Passover is, set upon the full moon of Nisan, and Tabernacles is set upon the full moon of Tishri, or the seventh month. They don't actually have names, but those are, the Aramaic, the Babylonian names of the months, because they assimilated, the Aramaic for those 70 years and all that. But yeah, so we've only got 2 minutes remaining. But just know, everybody, I will be done with the calendar tomorrow. I will order the proof copy. We'll get it out to you before the beginning of the upcoming year. And I pray that you do some discernment on this, look at and examine and consider um, whether you should be following this calendar to determine when Sabbath occurs. Even with Lisa reading from Jubilees, it tells us that, it was on the beginning of the third month on Rosh Kadesh, which is the new moon. So even that calendar shows that there was an incorporation of the moon into the determination of the passing of time. And so, again, this is a Enochian, where you have the moon and the sun considered for the determination of time and the passing of it. Final comment, Lisa?
Yes, just make sure you guys get your pre-orders in. One more verse in Jubilees in chapter 6, verse 34. "And all the children of Israel will forget and will not find the path of the years, and will forget the new moons and seasons and Sabbaths, and they will go wrong as to all the order of the years." But I believe that it's through ministries like Sacred Word Publishing that we're bringing all this back, and it's no coincidence that this is in the last days, that all of a sudden all this knowledge is being brought forward, and we're doing what we're supposed to do, celebrating what we're supposed to be celebrating.
Amen. Yes. Thank the Most High for discernment, and thank all of you for coming and supporting us, and to
Yes.
listening and learning together. We love all of you. We appreciate you, and thank you, Lisa, for joining me this evening. And we'll be
Thank
back
you.
tomorrow night, and we'll continue on with the research.
All right. Thank you so much, Zen. Blessings, everyone. Thank you guys all.
Blessings. Good night, everybody. Be blessed. Shalom. We love you, and I
Shalom.
hope you do enjoy the calendar. I think it's beautiful. The images are just beautiful. So, talk to you soon. All. Be blessed.
Okay.
Good night.
Bless you. Good night.
Good night.
Good night, Zen.
Good night.